From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Monday, June 26, 2023, as we bring you a new episode. Well, after losing 4 straight series, the Chicago White Sox finally bucked that streak by beating the Boston Red Sox in the last 2 games. That series win improves the White Sox record in the month of June to 11-10, and they're 34-45 overall. They're still 6 games back, though, of the Minnesota Twins in first place as they now embark on a second West Coast road trip this month, visiting Anaheim and Oakland. We'll preview that series in Anaheim on this episode, which will feature a Shohei Ohtani start, as well as discuss the White Sox handling Michael Kopech's workload, Andrew Benintendi thriving, hitting leadoff for the White Sox, and ponder if the White Sox should bring back Oscar Colas. But first, let's talk about who helped spark the White Sox series win and who has been the White Sox best player in 2023. Joining me is the managing editor of SoxMachine.com. It's Jim Margulis, and Jim, Luis Robert Jr. had a big weekend as he hit 3 home runs against the Red Sox, including 2 on Sunday. And a bit of a shocker to me, he's the first player in Major League Baseball this season to reach 20 doubles and 20 home runs. And I think we are finally seeing Robert's hyped potential coming to fruition.
I think we are. I think we're seeing Luis Robert Jr. being the best Luis Robert Jr. he can be. That's kind of how I look at it. I was looking at his some fan graphs, looking at his plate discipline, and when he had that surge after his benching, after those like hustle episodes at the end of April, early May, there was like an uptick in his production, and there was a big dip in his chase rate, his swing percentage. It really seemed like he was zeroing in on balls he could do damage on to the extent that he could. Like, still not like a patience king, not drawing a walk a game, but he was doing a better job at bringing pitchers within his pretty expansive hitting zone where he can do some damage. And so I thought, like, okay, he's, maybe he's doing the same thing again, and not really. Like, he's still this time, like his both his numbers are going up. His rolling 15 game average of WOBA and his rolling average of swing percentage, like they're both mirroring each other. Before they had this like contrast where one was rising and one was falling, and so you just see it like go whoop, and then like as he started to struggle again, like they meet again. This time it's going like it went from like splitting to converging, and now they're kind of going up together. And it's really weird, but it's along the lines of Tim Anderson being somebody who can succeed in a very unusual way and very specific to his skill set. I think we're seeing the same thing with Robert, to where like he can hit balls outside of his zone. He's strong enough to like muscle jammed shots into the outfield, or balls off the end of his bat into the outfield. He's also somebody who can look really silly for like 3 plate appearances at a time, but have a short enough memory to be like, and then, goes right back into it and does some damage when they make a mistake. So I think along the lines of Anderson, who's very aggressive, like there is a benefit of being so aggressive when somebody makes a mistake and you're ready for it. Sometimes we see that with other hitters like, Yasmani Grandal or Yohan Moncada when he was, functional, but still trying to figure out like balancing patience and aggression. Where like, when Robert's always ready, and when he has the reaction time to make quick changes to his timing, whether it's like just, using all arms to get a ball out, or, being on time for a fastball and being able to catch up to good velocity. Like, he's somebody who can manage to be ready for just about any pitch as long as it's in the zone. And when they make a mistake, he's doing a lot of damage right now.
Yeah, that second home run, especially being at the game, like his first home run on Sunday, it was a positive doink for a Chicago sports team, hitting the top of the wall and then going over the fence. There is no doubt about his second home run. Like, it's that type of laser line drive that we've always wanted to see from Luis Robert, something that we have been begging for. Someone pull the ball in the air at home, and we're starting to see a little bit out of that from the White Sox hitters. But when Luis Robert pulls the ball in the air, guarantee right field, it's like almost a no-doubter every single time for him.
Very cathartic.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And, before Sunday's game, this may surprise people too, especially with the All-Star voting going on, and Luis Robert not being voted in the top 20 of the American League outfielders. And that's a bit of a shame. And I think for me, it's a good sign of just how many White Sox fans have checked out of this season already, because Robert is second in the American League for outfielders in wins above replacement before Sunday's game. He was 1/10 of a point behind Randy Arozarena. Robert was at 2.8 WAR. Arozarena is at 2.9. Now, by the time our listeners get to this podcast and they go to Fangraphs to see what it's updated after Robert's 2 home run game, that might have changed and maybe Robert is leading again. But as we approach the halfway mark, and I look forward to your post this upcoming week, doubling up everyone's numbers and what that season's going to look like. For Robert, it's going to look great because he's got 21 home runs right now and 20 doubles in 76 games played, which also that's an incredible stat for Robert. He has played 76 of the White Sox 79 games. Robert is on pace to hit 43 home runs, Jim, and 41 doubles this season. And I know you brought this point up about a month ago that only 2 White Sox hitters have ever had a 40-40 season, and that was 1998 Albert Bell. He almost had a 50-50 season. He had 49 homers and 48 doubles. And 2000 Frank Thomas, who should have won the American League MVP, but Jason Giambi and steroids gave him that award, hitting 43 home runs and 44 doubles. Right now, Robert is on pace to be a 6 WAR player. And it's so unfortunate when you take a step back and look at the White Sox season, because Robert is doing what we've always asked him to do in this contention window as a White Sox fan. He is healthy. And not only is he healthy, the dude is crushing. And he is living up to the potential as being one of the best outfielders in the American League. And it's just too damn bad that Yohan Moncada, Tim Anderson, and to a certain extent, Eloy Jimenez are not following his lead.
Yeah, there are a few areas you can point fingers at. Like one, you can point a finger at Robert just because of that strange, week that he had that just soured some people on him. And it was like poorly timed too, because it was right at peak disenchantment for the White Sox, like at the end of April when everybody's just ready to throw in the towel, and he wasn't doing any favors either. It wasn't like he was, a beacon of, stellar play and teamsmanship and everything or teammateship and everything like that. Like he was, in the thick of it too, in terms of contributing to the despair of it all. So for people to check out and really not throw support behind him until it's probably too late, like he had a say in that, but also it's just more along the lines, just fans. Like I think a lot of White Sox fans would be happy if they didn't have like that one representative minimum and said like, oh, no White Sox should be going, like embarrass Rick Hahn, embarrass Kenny Williams, etc. by having no all-stars. A lot of fans at last month, mid-May probably would have been fine with that. But now Robert is clearly in all-star mode. And ultimately, I think that's good because, beyond the obvious benefits of a White Sox playing well, it's also a case of Robert, the contract that he has, he's the one guy who can bridge a roster and still be good at the end of his commitment. The whole 13-year contract that they didn't want to give Bryce Harper. And, the idea that you'll have 4 years where Bryce Harper isn't worth it. It's but you'll have 8 to 9 years where he should be. And that can span a couple different rosters. And the other guys they signed, Grandal, he cannot span a next era. Keuchel cannot span a next era. Tim Anderson, not looking like he can span a next era. Robert's contract can span another era. So if he's playing well, even if they do have to go through some kind of rebuild or retrenching, retooling, reshaping, what have you, he should still be there and good as long as he's good now and his tools are shaping up into something. So that's really beneficial to the team beyond just an individual performing up to his capabilities. The one drawback is and this I think is just a bigger fall to the White Sox and something they can maybe look at as they try to figure out how to get out of this roster. These redundancies they built is the one drawback of Robert, the way he plays, is that he doesn't draw walks. And with so many other guys not drawing walks, like, okay, that's not going to be Robert's jurisdiction.
Right.
But we got to get guys who get on base for him. Like, we cannot have like 6 or 7 other guys not drawing walks. Like, Robert, you can keep doing what you're doing. Everybody else, figure it out, or we got to figure out some guys who can come in and replace you. So that, that's another, benefit of him establishing himself so loudly is, his impatience or his aggression is worth it. Other hitters, not so much.
Yeah, to that point, Jim, 43 home run pace for Luis Robert, an 86 RBI pace. I know you hate that. I know it is ugly.
Especially with 41 doubles. Like, usually the guys who are hitting like 43 homers, 86 RBIs, they're like hitting 43 homers and 10 doubles because they can't run, or they're just selling out for power. Like, no, he's doing a pretty good job of being a well-rounded hitter, and there's just nobody on base for him.
Right. And I like that you brought up that's not his jurisdiction, because too often he gets to bat and he's either leading off the inning or there's already 2 outs because the guys in front of him are not getting on base. But a little bit of that is changing, especially the first inning regarding Andrew Benintendi. We'll get to Benintendi in a moment. But to your point, like, spanning the rosters over eras, for so long, the White Sox, when they signed Jose Abreu, and then realizing what they had in Jose Abreu in 2014, it was very clear that the roster construction offensively was, we need to build around Jose Abreu. And Rick Hahn and the White Sox front office did a horrible job of doing that, and that's why they had to go into a rebuild. But Jose Abreu spanned that era.
Yep.
And he went through the rebuild era and got through 2020 when he won the American League MVP. The second rebuild era. And got to at least play in the playoffs with the White Sox in 2021. And we've been wondering, with Abreu gone, who is going to be the guy, right? Who should the White Sox be building around? And before the season, I was stumping for Tim Anderson. Clearly, that's not the case. It's got to be Luis Robert. To your point that contract-wise, team control-wise, he's going to be around. Andrew Vaughn is doing some nice things, but he's not a difference maker like Luis Robert is. So I think it's pretty clear, if everyone's looking for a beacon of hope, that what the White Sox could build around in the near future to get back into contention, I think it's pretty clear Luis Robert is your guy. He is the guy. So build around Luis Robert in the best way possible. Yeah,
and I think they can learn something, or, hopefully it's not Rick Hahn doing it again, Kenny Williams, but let's just say it is, like, third time's a charm, hopefully. But, with Abreu, he had some weaknesses, against right-handed pitching. Maybe not all the time, but enough of a time to be like, oh, he's definitely stronger against lefties. Righties can pose a problem where he can get into ruts against righties. When he struggled, his ground ball rate was high, didn't draw too many walks. So, like, he had some shortcomings, which is fine, because he had enough strengths to offset those and more than compensate for him. But they brought in too many guys who also struggled against righties and hit too many ground balls and didn't draw walks. So in this case, like, Robert has some commonalities there, being right-handed, being somebody who doesn't draw walks and can get into ruts where he just is swinging at everything. So this time around, like, they have to be more mindful of that and say, like, we're not building around a Bryce Harper or a Mike Trout or Mookie Betts or somebody like that who can, bend pitchers to his will. And we have a lot more leeway about who surrounds him because he's so, like, his plate approach is impenetrable. Like, Robert has holes. He has weaknesses in his approach. So when the White Sox do start acquiring players or developing players, what have you, like, keep that in mind. Your linchpin right now is somebody who is, righty and, is impatient. So let's not try to have our other linchpins and our keystones of the lineup also have these same weaknesses.
Yeah, you already got 2 Bash brothers, right? You got Robert, you got Jake Berger. Find 7 other guys that can consistently get on base. Like, that's that's what you need. And it would be nice if some of these guys had athleticism that could run a little bit. Because Andrew Vaughn gets on base, but man, the guy runs like he's Fred Flintstone. Like, he's not fast, so he doesn't help you in that department. But Robert is having a fantastic season for the White Sox. Again, at the halfway point, we're looking at one of the special seasons, and Yeah, I know it's unfortunate that the White Sox are where they're at record-wise, but Luis Robert, I think, is going to be representing the Chicago White Sox, or should be representing the Chicago White Sox in a couple of weeks in Seattle for the All-Star game. Maybe Jake Berger tags along to participate in the Home Run Derby. I know that he wants to do that. That would be kind of fun, but Robert should definitely be there and help represent the White Sox and the American League in the All-Star break. Let's talk about Andrew Benintendi, because with Tim Anderson having his struggles, and he played 2 games this weekend, I don't want to talk about that because there's just really nothing positive to talk about when it comes to Tim Anderson right now. But Pedro Grifol swapped Anderson and Benintendi in the lineup, and Andrew Benintendi's batting leadoff. In his last 6 games, Benintendi's 10 for 26. He's hitting .385 out of that spot with 4 doubles. Now, the LOL part is that Benintendi has only scored 1 run in his last 6 games as the leadoff hitter. That's not great. But it does raise the question, because Andrew Benintendi looks more comfortable at the plate, with my eye test being at the homestand this week, Jim. Should Pedro Grifol keep Benintendi at the top spot for the foreseeable future?
God, yes. Just more because of the lack of options, but also, yeah, he's fine there. And also I'm not sure what's going on with Tim Anderson. I think we had to talk a lot about it a little bit in the context of Benintendi, because it's either been Anderson or it's been Benintendi. And so Benintendi's doing a good job there. He's, it benefits him in terms of he doesn't have to do damage when he's facing a lefty. He just has to get on base. Because that was the drawback of acquiring him, and the way Grifol managed him early on was against righties, top of the order, top third. Against lefties, 6th or so, just because he doesn't do damage. And in this case, with Anderson being out, Benintendi, even if he just gets on base against lefties, if he gets on base at a 340 clip and he slugs 340, it's suboptimal for the franchise record contract, but it's fine. It's useful. You can make, if you don't have anybody else putting up a 340 OBP, at least at the top of the order, or the guys who are putting up a 340 OBP are the guys who you want driving in runs as well. Put Benintendi in front of him. He runs the bases well enough to, go from, first to third, first to home, second to home, and can make use of the hits coming behind him. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. With Anderson, he played a couple games, and I'd love to know what the discussions are, just because every time Anderson plays or gets in a bad start to second, the first thought I think is why? And not it's not a cynical why or a snarky why. It's a genuinely curious why. He's not doing anything well right now. Zach Remillard, I think, is he's a good contrast in terms of just stable. What he can do, what he can't, he's healthy, he'll play he's experienced at second base to play good defense there. Aside from getting the picked off, caught stealing, he's run the bases well when he's on base. The at-bats are okay. Can occasionally lift the ball, not going to hit with authority, but he's very much a replacement level, and we're seeing the difference between replacement level and what Anderson's doing. I think that's really troubling when he keeps getting back in the lineup to play a position he never has, and he's made multiple defensive mistakes, or not. I would say in the 9th inning with Kendall Graveman on the mound, it wasn't quite a mistake because it was a play of a medium degree of difficulty, but you have to think a more experienced second baseman probably stands a better chance at doing something with that ball. So I don't get why he's playing. I don't get, there seems to be no boost with him in the lineup. And it seems like if the White Sox either are going to make a push or they want to try to line up their best possible trade assets, you would think giving them an IL stint and saying let's wait for the All-Star break, come back. With Anderson, you can tell if he's functioning well. A team should be able to see a week of him and say oh yeah, he's back. They don't need a month and a half body of work to understand if he's being Tim Anderson at 90 to 100%. You can see pretty quickly. Is he hitting the ball with line drives to right field? Is he occasionally pulling the mistake in the air to left? Is he running well? Is his footwork okay? Okay, great. When he's not functioning, it just flares out to right. Everything on the left side's on the ground, and he's not there. you should be able to learn in 2 weeks or so whether Anderson is trade value. So I don't get why they're just dragging this out, because there's really just no benefits. And Benintendi being good in the leadoff spot, getting on base and running okay, that I think would help dissuade the powers that be to try to jam Anderson in the lineup when it's just not working.
Yeah, Anderson, like, here's my perspective, Jim. If your shoulder hurts bad enough that you can't start at shortstop, it probably hurts when you swing the bat. And there's just not a lot of power. And even like the pickoff with Lucas Giolito, I don't even know how to explain that. Like, Anderson just simply dropped the ball. Like, it was thrown right at him, perfect throw, and it ends up being an unearned run because Anderson
a little bit glove
it.
side, but it wasn't like full extension or anything like that. There was no tag to make. Like, he was not, there was no chance of getting a tag on the guy. It was just catch the ball.
Right. You can't catch the ball.
Yeah.
So, I didn't want to talk about Tim Anderson because there's just nothing positive to say right now. In his last 20 games, Tim Anderson's 15 for 76. That's a 197 batting average. He's got a 235 on base percentage, and he's slugging 250. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a 485 OPS in his last 20 games. That's Gordon Beckham territory right now.
That's Larry, right?
It's Lurie Garcia territory. Yeah. It's bad. And I'm with you, Jim. Like, I don't think he should be playing in this road trip. I'm with you. Put him on the IL, maybe to the All-Star break, and just let him heal, if that's truly what it is. But if it's something else, if he needs a mental break, if he just needs a time away from the field, give it to him, because it's not like he's a difference maker right now. And the other thing that kind of angers me still, and I understand where you're coming from Zach Remillard, there's really no point then why Jose Rodriguez is currently on the bench. Like, I think you're just wasting time here. You're wasting a week of player development. Maybe he learns, like, oh, this is how a major league clubhouse functions, and there is the whole aspect of learning while watching major leaguers handle their job. But it'd be nice to see him. It'd be nice to see if Jose Rodriguez could actually hit major league pitching right now, especially if you're thinking that he's going to be part of the near future as far as the White Sox answer in the middle infield in 2024. So it'd be nice to see him get a start here or there. But, yeah, we did not see that this week.
Well, usually, like, the argument for watching is, like, you watch and then you play and then you watch some more.
Right.
Just because, like, you understand, like, oh, that was, this is the sense of the game. Oh, here's what the speed of the game looks like. And now I'll see how, like, the best of the best react. But, yeah, he just hasn't had that firsthand experience, and I don't get it either.
But back to Benintendi in his last 25 games, folks. A 310 batting average, 383 on base percentage, slugging 417. That's an 800 OPS for Andrew Benintendi in the last 25 games. That is what the White Sox were paying the big bucks for.
Yeah, I'd say, like, it was a little bit of, like, Royals Benintendi, which I think Benintendi is slightly unhappy with, because I think he thought he'd hit for more power. Mm-hmm. But if the hand's been, and that's another thing, like, the hand, the way the national broadcast started talking about his hand when they had the ESPN game and then the Apple TV game,
right,
and we hadn't heard anything about his hand from Benetti and Stone, and I'm not sure about Len Casper and Darren Jackson, but just nothing on the local broadcast. But then, like, as soon as it gets to ESPN, Apple TV, we start hearing about the hand, and maybe it's because they're familiar with how his season with the Yankees ended. If you want to throw, like, East Coast bias or, like, paying attention to the Yankees into it, maybe they're doing much about it. But part of me wondered, like, is he starting to feel close to being out of it to where, like, he can start talking about it more? Like, maybe he's somebody who doesn't want to use it as an excuse when he's going poorly. But if he sees, like, the light at the end of the tunnel and says, like, okay, I'm starting to, the underlying metrics, of my contact, how it feels when I'm putting the barrel through the zone, like, everything's great here. Maybe I'll start talking about my hand now to, like, let people know that, like, that wasn't me over the first 2 months. And this is, more likely what you're going to be seeing going forward. That's one thing that crossed my mind, because the timing was really strange to go that long and hit for no homers. Then, like, at the very end of it, say, my hand is, I'm still working through that, when it just really hasn't been mentioned. And it would be, among all the White Sox struggling, it would be the easiest thing to understand, because, it was documented.
Right.
just missed the last few weeks of the season. It'd be another case of the White Sox picking up an injured player or a player whose season ended in injury and not getting him back at 100% at the start of his contract, and a very, important part of what the White Sox are trying to do. But, still, at least it's an excuse, and weird that we didn't hear about it if indeed it was hurting him that much.
Yeah, the challenge for Pedro Grifol now is that when you got Benintendi having this good 25-game stretch, Luis Robert doing what he's doing, finding someone to be a dependable guy between Benintendi and Robert. We saw Andrew Vaughn bat second. He did not have a good game on Sunday, but I'd like to see a little bit more creativity from Pedro Grifol if he is for sure going to continue to have Benintendi bat leadoff and Robert bat third. The White Sox could really use an answer to bat second. And no, it's not Tim Anderson at the moment. I would like the White Sox to try
enjoy
someone
Robert
else.
batting second.
I'm with you. I'm with you there. Maybe go Benintendi, Robert, Vaughn third, or do you just move Jimenez up to third? Or
Jimenez, either one. Like, I think there are arguments for both. I think Vaughn's doing a bit better of a job of hitting the ball in the air. So at least, I haven't looked it up, so I could be wrong, but it seems like, Vaughn's driving the ball pretty well, and I think making decent sac fly contact if it gets to that point, if need be. So either one, I think it's interchangeable.
Yeah, I mean, Vaughn's been slugging .495 in the last 26 games for the White Sox with 6 homers and 5 doubles. The problem for Vaughn is that he's hitting .242 during this stretch, and with an on base percentage of .327. We're not seeing a lot of contact from Andrew Vaughn, which is fine if he's going to sell out for power, and that's the mentality for the White Sox right now. Forget grounders, forget singles, let's hit solo home runs. You guys know this. I am team ball in air. I'm perfectly fine with that. I just like to see the lineup configured in a way so when Luis Robert is hitting bombs, that either Andrew Benintendi or somebody else is on base. There's got to be a way to sequence this eventually for the White Sox to score more runs. But they had a good weekend. They've won 2 games in a row. Luis Robert was a big part of that. Andrew Benintendi thriving at the leadoff spot. Let's see if this momentum can keep going on this West Coast road trip. Jim and I will take a quick break for a word from our sponsor. But coming up next, we're going to talk about Michael Kopech and the White Sox challenge now handling his workload, and an idea of possibly returning Oscar Colas back to Chicago. Next on the Sox Machine podcast. I'm sure many of you had this debate with significant others and friends about how fashionable cargo shorts are. As someone who has fought these battles and has been willing to die on the hill about the benefits of cargo shorts, I found a new light. In my attempts to get into more shape, I've lost a couple of pants short sizes, so it was time for a new wardrobe fix, and I discovered an apparel company called Bird Dogs. They make a wide range of gear, but they get high marks for their shorts. After receiving a pair, I understand the hype. Bird Dogs stretch khaki shorts have a slimmer fit, so it's more in line with today's fashion trends. It gives legs a sculpted look, but it's still a great fit around the waist, so I don't feel constricted. That's because Bird Dog shorts are not made with stiff, restricted cotton. Bird Dogs invented a cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but it stretches to get you a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement, which is key for me. I want to look fashionable, but in a practical way. It's going to get hot in Chicago, I promise you. And if you are like me, wanting to up your shorts game, check out Bird Dogs. Right now, they're running a special. When you make your order at birddogs.com, use promo code POOL at checkout to receive a free Yeti-style tumbler. Again, the URL is birddogs.com/pool. Use promo code POOL at checkout for that gift. Welcome back to the Sox Machine podcast. Michael Kopech, in his last start against the Texas Rangers this past Wednesday, just went 4 innings, and he threw 86 pitches. Now, that's a lot of pitches in 4 innings. But James Fegan, who pinch hit for Daryl Van Schouwen for the Chicago Sun-Times this weekend, was able to get Ethan Katz, the pitching coach for the White Sox, to admit that the White Sox are already planning, after the All-Star break, to reshuffle the rotation, moving Kopech back to the 5th starter spot to give him more rest. So this is something that's on the White Sox mind here, Jim, because Kopech is already at 82 innings this season. His career high from last year is 119 2/3 innings. So he, at this moment, is on pace to smash that. And the White Sox are trying to be mindful because he had Tommy John not that long ago. They put him as a reliever mostly in 2021. He was a full-time starter for the first time in the major leagues in 2022. They're trying to be mindful, but how much of a concern is Kopech's workload so far?
I was surprised by the reaction to the hook and Grifal's explanation and such. I was asked about it when I was on The Score with Dan and Lawrence, and watching that start, watching the third and fourth inning, and it wasn't getting any better. Like, there was no reason to think like a fifth inning would have been better than the third or the fourth. Just, it was turning into a grind. Your command was getting away from him. Pitches were piling up. They had a fresh Jimmy Lambert, a fresh Touki Toussaint, and just like, that's the game to finally, for Grifal, like a shorter hook, because Grifal usually has guys throwing 90 to 100 and 110 pitches in between that range, no matter how well they're doing. So the fact that he pulled up a little short of that, an inning, in advance, off day the next day, 2 fresh pitchers, like, sure, that's the time to do it. And like, it doesn't strike me as like a front of mind thing to have like I'm watching like the Marlins with Eury Perez and being 20 years old and trying to like, oh, now you're the ace of the team. How do you manage this? Steven Strasburg all over again, trying to figure out how to get to September. Like, it isn't that. It's just more of a matter of like, yeah, he's along the lines of Luis Robert, like being a pleasant surprise with how available he's been. It's been very refreshing with Kopech that we really haven't had to worry about like his well-being. We've had to worry about like, just, is his slider any good? Why is he walking so many guys? Is he past his knee injury entirely in terms of like his mechanics and such? But it's all been either circumstantial or just secondary to the experience of watching him. Is just like, when he's not off his game, like, is he hurt or is he 100%? And, then he ends up having a start where he looks 100%. You're like, okay, it's not that. So it's been very refreshing to watch him start and not be watching his velocity, languishing in the low 90s and having to kind of junk ball his way through an outing to get through 5. Like, so I look at it and say like, I'm not really worried about innings, but I do think it's like prudent for Grifal and Ethan Katz to like look at a game like his last start and say like, this isn't going well. Can we get out of this early? Yes. Okay, let's do it. And then afterwards we'll say like, yeah, just live to fight another day. Save some bullets. Just be able to recover all the way in case he is experiencing like a little bit of a dead arm thing. And probably just he varies enough in his location and command being like a 1-pitch pitcher kind of, or like 1.5 pitch pitcher with his fastball doing so much of the heavy lifting that if he's not on top of his game with his fastball, it's going to be a tougher game. So just spare him a little bit and keep that in mind that, he's going to be blasting through that threshold, knock on wood, assuming he's able to, stay healthy. But right now there are no indications that he's hurting in any way. So may as well keep that in full working order as long as like you're not costing the White Sox chance to win that game, and pulling him at that point like did not cost the White Sox anything. So I thought it was actually a good hook and smart, and just something to keep in mind when it's not going well. Like, you got other arms, you got guys you can option down, like use those in order to spare them, because like, especially if you're looking at Kopech for a starter next year, like if it becomes less about what the White Sox are in 2023 and more like, man, what's this rotation going to look like in 2024? Then it becomes like an even bigger picture to worry about in terms of just like, get him to 150 innings, get him in good shape for the 2024 rotation in case you have aspirations then, because you're going to need him even more.
Well, we had that conversation into April with Kopech because his ERA for the season was 7 after April. Like, is Kopech a starter? Do the White Sox need to move back to the bullpen? Well, after that start against the Rangers, his season ERA is down to 4.06. So after a very good May where he made 7 starts and he had a month ERA of 2.75, yes, his last 2 starts against Texas and Seattle, Kopech could not get through 5 innings. But in the month of June, he's only allowed 6 earned runs in 20 and a third innings. That's a 2.66 ERA. Kopech has been a good starter for the White Sox. Can he be more efficient? Absolutely. He can absolutely be more efficient. What I think moving forward for the White Sox with Kopech's workload, and thinking aloud here, I don't know if the White Sox can afford to be cute and restrict Kopech's workload because you don't have enough starting pitchers. Like, this is where, like, reading that paragraph in the Sun-Times, like, Ethan Katz admitting that the White Sox are going to try to give Kopech more rest after the All-Star break. I get that. But you only have 4 starting pitchers right now. You got 4 starters, and then you got a bullpen day. And this upcoming road trip, that bullpen day is scheduled to be against the Oakland Athletics unless suddenly something changes with Mike Clevenger's injury status. Like, the White Sox don't have enough starting pitching depth where I think they could really curb Kopech's workload. And he's 27 years old. I feel like this is the time. Like, if Kopech feels strong and he doesn't feel anything physically is wrong with him, I say push him 150 innings. Let's see if he can do that over 30 starts.
Yeah, I think with that comment, I think it could be read 2 ways. Like, after the All-Star break, you've talked about it, that it's not really like 90 games left or 85 games left. It's 30 games left, 20 games left until the trade deadline, until you choose a direction. So when I hear, or read Kat saying, like, after this, in the second half, give them more rest, like, it depends on where they are. Like, if they are tearing it down or selling off their expiring contracts, and you can give Kopech like an extra start. Like, you can skip a turn. You can maybe give him like rearrange the rotation to give him 7 days rest in between starts. Like, sure, do it. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you're not maximizing. You don't need to maximize his weekly contributions to a roster. You just need to get him all the way through and have him at full strength, not pitching in a compromised fashion. So if that helps towards that end, sure. But yeah, for the time being, with the White Sox still thinking they're in it, you have to take that mindset of just like pitch them every 5 days, or if there's a 6th day because there's an off day, sure. But like, give him every turn until he starts wobbling, and then maybe adjust it then. But yeah, just force him with his performance to tell you if he needs a break. Otherwise, like, just full speed ahead until the deadline, see how his teammates are doing. Also see how he's doing. Cause like, when he was struggling, the White Sox struggled too. Like, he had a hand in that as well. But, assuming he's this functional 3rd, 4th starter who, limits runs, but also limits innings because of just some weaknesses in his approach, and just, not having, when you're that fastball heavy, you just get a lot of foul balls and just at bats really dragged out. Like, see if you can get a little bit more efficiency out of him. But ultimately, like, if they tear it down, like, there will be opportunities to give him rest, and it won't really matter in the context of just how hard the White Sox are trying to overtake the Twins or the Guardians or what have you. So I'm a little bit more open-minded, but yeah, if they're 3 games out and it's July 20th and they're starting to plan Kopech's rest, I would say, like, not yet. Second half of August might be the time for that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Kopech right now is probable workload before the All-Star break is 3 more starts. So 2 on this road trip against the Angels and 1 against the Oakland Athletics. And then Kopech is scheduled to make a start against the St. Louis Cardinals. And if that trend continues, and if the White Sox are going to push Kopech back and not have him make a start against the Atlanta Braves after the All-Star break, it could be 10 days between starts for Michael Kopech, making one of those starts in Queens against the New York Mets. Like, that's a pretty long break for a starting pitcher. And that also has ramifications. You could give a starting pitcher too much time off.
Yeah, but I think 10 days feels fine, especially since, like, right now he's on pace for, if he made every single start, he's on pace for like 165 innings, because he'll make one more start before the halfway point, and that's pretty good. Like, 32 starts, that's what you want to see from him, 160 plus innings. Yeah. So, I mean, like, you can give him a little bit of a spell here and be fine. But, I think part of the value of him pushing through the knee injury yesteryear, was to just have him accrue the innings no matter what, as long as it didn't like compromise his shoulder or something like that. Like, you're battling through a knee injury and their cascade injury that all of a sudden your elbow and shoulder in jeopardy because you're throwing weird, because your lower body is betraying you. Didn't seem to be the case, seemed to luck out in that regard. So now it's just a matter of like, if their biomechanics people are saying like, nope, he's putting all the stress where it needs to be, then that 10 days off I think should be sufficient. or 8 days, whatever it happens to be, should be sufficient to just give him that necessary breather to at least get through like, mid-August. And then, if the White Sox are out of it, then start like, hopefully there are guys to audition, but if not, like maybe audition, mess around with some openers, mess around like this Tanner Banks, Jesse Schultens thing. I like seeing the way that's going right now with some creative handling of, partially caused by emergency, but I like seeing Grifol do that, experiment with some alternate deployment plans. And if that's the case, like, try a few more of those, give Kopech, push him back in the rotation a couple days to give him some extra breather. And just, if you get to over 150 innings, qualify for the ERA title, that'd be awesome.
Now let's talk about the White Sox right field situation. So when we were talking about like the last 30 days and how well Luis Robert was doing, how well Andrew Benintendi's been doing, even Andrew Vaughn, his slugging percentage, and how poorly Tim Anderson's been doing, the White Sox right field situation, again, is a problem, especially offensively. In the last 21 games, Gavin Sheets is hitting 196 with a 288 on-base percentage and slugging 314. He has just one home run in his last 21 games. That's a 602 OPS. When Frazier's not out there, when Sheets is not out there, we're seeing a lot of Clint Frazier. And Clint Frazier, in his last 22 games with the White Sox, is 6 for 42 hitting-wise. That's a 143 batting average. He's got 7 walks, so he walks. He's got more walks than hits, so he's got a 265 on-base percentage. But there's no power in this bat for Clint Frazier. His slugging percentage is 167. That's a 432 OPS. So in the last 20 games, your choices are either a struggling, bat is cold Gavin Sheets with a 600 OPS, or a guy who should not be in the major leagues, Clint Frazier. So it brings up this question because we've seen the highlights in the last couple of days. Oscar Colas has hit 3 home runs in the last 2 games for the Charlotte Knights. Now, Oscar Colas has been kind of struggling when it comes to home run power when he rejoined the Charlotte Knights. He did not light the world on fire at AAA. With these 3 home runs, it increases his AAA total to just 5 home runs in the season, which is a bit odd. But the White Sox could use more offense, as I pointed out, Jim. And is this real from what we've seen from Colas in the last 2 days? Like, should the White Sox consider bringing back Colas to help bring more offense to right field?
2 of the homers were real. One of the homers was 92 miles per hour exit velocity. And truest field being truest field, it got out like front row left field, I think 340 feet towards like not power alley, but also like not down the line. It was like solidly left field that he went out. So yeah, it's like you got a little bit of that Charlotte boost. But I noted in the minor keys that it was strange just how little we've heard about Colas, even though like Clint Frazier's like been bad and Gavin Sheets has been bad. It reminded me of just any kind of character from TV show who like was on the first season, then written out. Like Mark Brendanowitz came to mind on Parks and Rec, like major love interest. He was in the opening credits and then he's not there the second season and nobody cares. Just what it felt like with Colas, like, he's the plan for right field. He's why we don't need a right fielder. He might be rookie of the year. And then like at the end of April, they send him down just like nothing. And it's not even that somebody has like Wally pipped him. It's just, they'd rather let just the current situation rot or like be impressed that Clint Frazier actually draws a walk. That's good enough to go without him. But it does feel like maybe they're just waiting for him. Like he's their one chance for like outfield upside in this organization. And maybe they're just like waiting to deploy it, because like if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's almost like a trick play in a way, like gotta save for the right time. Because if he comes out and he's like another like 1 win below replacement in a month, like he was in April, if he's like on pace for a -6 WAR season, just based on his body of work, like, nope, we got nothing. Like that's our upside. It's gone. Like our upside is now down to Lenin Sosa, who, had a couple issues between like just adjustments, major leagues, and also the strained oblique, but like he's their upside. So I think there might be like a strategic element for when to see if you can get that, first lightning in a bottle before like the league makes adjustments. Like, and I think it's coming up soon. now that we're seeing him lift the ball a little bit more, because like when he wasn't hitting for power, it's just like, well, great. If he doesn't have that power, like that was a problem already in the majors. It was a problem in the minors. Like, why would you expect him to have impact contact in the majors? But now that we're starting to see it, like I could see it being pretty soon. Because I think Clint Frazier, like, can't play center field, as we saw. Not much of a defensive replacement. Like, the thing about Colas is he's like a full game player. If he's up, like he can play a, passable right field, can play a passable center better than Frazier can. And I think he'd be okay. But yeah, I think if you're looking for lightning in a bottle until the league adjusts to him again, then maybe there's another rut. I think maybe the month of July is it. Like trying to see if Colas can provide that rookie of the year boost or rookie of the year vote boost that they thought they might be getting at some point during the season. Like July would be the key time to do that.
Well, we'll see how this week goes for the White Sox right field situation. But again, Gavin Sheets' bat has been ice cold, and Clint Frazier is looking to walk. He's not much of a hitter right now for the White Sox, so that's your right field for the Chicago White Sox. So Andrew Benintendi's been good, Luis Roberts been great, and then right field still a problem, still the bane of our existence as White Sox fans.
Who could have seen that coming?
Who could have saw that coming? Absolutely, Jim. But that will do it for the Oscar Colas Michael Kopech conversation. Jim and I will take our second break here for another word from one of our sponsors. But coming up next, let's preview the White Sox next series as they head on the road to Anaheim to face the Los Angeles Angels. Next on the Sox Machine podcast. One reason why I hate buying tickets to anything these days is the waiting room. You know that feeling. You get the pre-sale code, and even if you got the pre-sale code and you log in, you're stuck in the waiting room with thousands of other people, not even sure if you're going to get a chance to buy tickets. Buying tickets to any event shouldn't be stressful, and that's why I've switched and used Game Time. It's the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater shows near you. I use it to buy concert and theater tickets now. For Chicago events, you could use it. It's also great for Major League Baseball games as well. They have some killer deals, especially when it comes to White Sox tickets, as Game Time is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event, and you can get exclusive flash deals on tickets for the baseball games or any of the comedy and theater shows that'll be happening all summer long in Chicago. And what I really like about Game Time is that they have the Game Time guarantee, which means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. That's why it's one of the fastest growing ticketing apps in the country for a reason. So snag the tickets without stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app on your phone, either for Apple or Android devices, create an account, and use promo code Sox Machine for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account on Game Time and redeem code Sox Machine for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back to the Sox Machine podcast. All right, so the White Sox now go back on the road after their homestand. And their first road visit is in Anaheim to face the Angels for a 4-game series, as the Angels are 42-37. Now, they did lose their last game, but they're 6 games back of the Texas Rangers in the American League West. They're 1 game back of the wild card, and they have almost caught the Houston Astros in the American League West standings. So for all those people wondering, will the Angels trade Shohei Ohtani before the trade deadline? Not looking to be the case, especially with the Angels still in playoff contention. In their last 10 games, they are 4-6, but at home this season, the Angels are 20-16, and they have already won 2 out of 3 games against the White Sox. The Angels won that series in late May. For your pitching probables in this 4-game series, starting on Monday night at 8:38 p.m. Central Time. That'll be the times for the games on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Interesting pitching matchup on Monday. You got Dylan Cease against Reed Detmers, in which Detmers has been pitching well for the Angels. Tuesday, we talked about Michael Kopech. He'll be going up against Shohei Ohtani. We did not see Ohtani pitch against the White Sox in Chicago, but will on Tuesday night. Wednesday night, it is Lucas Giolito against Jaime Barrera. And on Thursday, getaway day, it's Lance Lynn against Patrick Sandoval. And, of course, we all remember what happened when Lance Lynn last faced the Angels. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, and hopefully Lynn's resurgence as of late fares better, especially against Shohei Ohtani, who feasted off of Lance Lynn last time he saw them. However, the thing that really caught my attention over the weekend, and I think it's hard to ignore for any baseball fans, is that with the Angels in Colorado this past weekend, they won 25-1 on Saturday. And it was like, 24-0 after the fourth inning?
I think so, or 23. They might have scored 2 runs at some point. But yeah, I think they scored 13 and then 8 in consecutive innings.
Yeah, they hit 3 consecutive home runs on 3 consecutive pitches in that game as well. Just an absolute blowout by the Angels against the Rockies. But it gave me this idea, and I know we've talked about it in the past, but I am still in favor of a mercy rule in Major League Baseball, Jim. If you are down by 10 or more runs after the 7th inning, the game should be over. Now, you will create some type of weird walk-off situations in which if you're the home team and you have a home run that puts you up by 11, ta-da, the game's over. A walk-off win because of the mercy rule. But watching Colorado struggle to get through that grind of a game, being down by that much, and they burned 3 of their starting pitchers just to get through those 9 innings. I wonder if Major League Baseball is so concerned about pitching health and not wanting to disrupt rosters because of lopsided games. I'm wondering if a mercy rule would be a good idea for Major League Baseball.
I mean, part of me likes it because like it is a thing in curling to concede when games are getting out of hand. I do wonder just when it comes to, airtime, when it comes to incentives, when it comes to gambling, like when it comes to just prop bets, if you're costing players plate appearances, how does that factor into like conceding if things are on the line? So that's why I think like games kind of have to go to full completion. I think the teams have figured out in terms of just throwing out position players who mail it in. Like that was the, it's unfortunate for fans because like there was always a pleasure in watching position players trying to pitch and seeing which ones were good and seeing which ones were like actually knew how to throw a curveball or had a good knuckleball. Now they're all just lobbing 50-mile-per-hour pitches because they realize there's no point. There's no glory really in throwing a good inning. So just help your team out by lobbing stuff and waiting for batting practice to turn into outs. So that's why I think like the league figured it out in terms of like how to get through games, even when it's out of hand and just not fun to watch, but they do finish the game. What stood out to me in that game was like Shohei Ohtani only 1 for 7 in that.
I know they figured out how to stop Ohtani.
But like, when you look at their June splits, like they're getting offense from so many guys, like Mickey Moniak is now a guy all of a sudden. And like, when you look at all the top prospects the White Sox have in their, there are former top prospects the White Sox have in their lineup and all the first round draft picks, they just like, let's pick him up too. Like, I'm surprised Moniak isn't doing that for the White Sox, but like, looking at their, their guys with 4-digit OPS is like Ohtani, but then Moniak, Zach Neto is doing well. Brandon Drury's over 900. Hunter Renfroe is like doing better than Mike Trout. Like, they have a deep lineup that I think they were hoping to have and have had like in spurts, but it's going to pose a test for the White Sox. It's going to like force the White Sox offense to raise their game because like even in a comfortable win on Sunday, they still only scored 4 runs. And like Luis Robert was doing all the damage. So it is going to put pressure on like the White Sox facing decent pitchers. Like, okay, so you might have to score 6 runs. Can you do it? And that's what I'm going to be watching for is like, the Angels are scoring runs. So can they go toe to toe against like pitchers who are not world beaters? They're like respectable major league pitchers, but they lose games. They have ERAs of 4+, like team score runs on them. White Sox have to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, Ohtani this year has got 25 home runs and 61 RBIs. His season OPS is 1,000 and 300 at bats. Just incredibly impressive from Ohtani. Mike Trout has been cooling off a little bit for the Angels this year, and I say that he's got 17 homers and 41 RBIs and an 851 OPS, but
you're striking out a ton.
He is striking out a ton. He's got 90 strikeouts already this season. And we just have gotten used to Mike Trout also having like 1,000 OPS at the halfway mark of a season for the Angels. But he hasn't been top tier for the Angels this year, which is a bit of a surprise. But to Jim's point, other guys are picking up the slack. And from the Angels' perspective, for those that would like the White Sox to buy, the Angels in the last couple of days have made some interesting moves. They have traded for Eduardo Escobar, old friend alert, with the New York Mets through a couple of prospects back to New York. And then they also acquired Mike Moustakas, the other Kansas City Royal. Mike Moustakas from Colorado. What do you think about the Angels' moves here? Because again, as I mentioned, they're trying to catch Houston. They're still some distance behind Texas, but they're right there in the thick of things in the wild card. And there's been some questions at third base for the Angels, and there's not a lot of clarity on what's going on with Anthony Rendon, if he's going to be healthy enough to help out the team this year. But here's the Angels getting a couple flyers here, making the first splashes of the trade market, getting Eduardo Escobar and Mike Moustakas, Jim.
Yeah, I think at this point, Neto got hurt, so they called up, David Fletcher, who was outrighted at one point and not good enough to make a flawed roster. So they do need like options in case Fletcher proves that going back to that well again. So, makes sense. Moustakas, I just thought the timing was hilarious because it was right after that 25-1 game and Moustakas was on the other team. Like I laughed out loud at Craig Goldstein, Baseball Prospectus. Like he just, he tweeted after the trade, like Moustakas busting into the locker room, like, F yeah, boys, what a win. It's like, just especially Moustakas has no attachment to the Rockies. He's just there because they would hire him. Like he's just trying to like hang on and still give whatever baseball he's got left. Like, yeah, that's gotta be the greatest possible situation. Maybe when there's some distance from it, I'd like to hear his thoughts. Like when he's not like immediately burning who he's just playing for. It'd be great to hear just like, what were your feelings like going from, one dugout to the other, going from also ran to a contender, like after that contender just clubbed the bejesus out of you. So yeah, I thought that was hilarious, but they just need options. And especially given that they did pass Houston briefly, then now they're a half game back at Houston because they swapped wins and losses, but they just need to keep afloat. And I think like if these moves aren't costing them anything and they're costing them like top or like bottom half of top 30 prospects for a guy, and it's not that good of a farm system. Like, yeah, just get Escobar. Like maybe the Mets are weird this year. Maybe Escobar's got some baseball left and the Mets cast-offs are just like not a bad well to go to when so much of their team is kind of like not functioning well right now. Like, yeah, give them a shot. Buy time basically if it's not costing anything. And then like when Neto comes back, like hopefully he can pick up where you left off.
Do you think the White Sox should take a similar strategy if they wanted to add to the roster, if they still thought that they were contending? I know we just talked about this in our previous episode of what the White Sox should do at the trade deadline. I think they should sell, but we both agree ultimately the White Sox are probably just going to stay put. But if you ever want an example of a team buying at the deadline without giving up too much, and the White Sox don't have a lot to give up, this is an example, Jim, of what the Angels just did to acquire someone like Eduardo Escobar.
I guess the White Sox kind of did that with Clint Frazier, although like early in the year, you're really getting just, the people who are not good enough to hold like minor league jobs or like don't necessarily want them in your system, or not maybe want them in your system, but also say like, we don't have a position for you. Like we're going to cut you loose and see if you can get a better opportunity elsewhere. Like, Frazier was not going to help the Texas Rangers given the way they're playing and how much depth they have. So they cut him loose. Now I think there's a little bit more quality, or at least more track records on the open market to where like, yeah, I mean, Escobar might've been able to help the Sox with who they're rolling out at second base, and might be a missed opportunity. But I think for the White Sox, given where they are, given the uncertainty beyond, especially with the infield situation, like Andrews is a free agent after the year, Anderson's a free agent after next year, given the way he's playing, like, I don't think the options in question is more a matter of if they trade him. Like it could be a case of like, if he plays well enough to be traded, it could be a case where that position opens up sooner. Like you might need bodies just the same. I just wonder if they would be looking for guys who are going to be around next year, or like, might stand a chance of helping next year's roster versus like use whatever baseball you have left now. Like let's wring, wring that dry. Like right now, the White Sox, that doesn't serve them as much of a purpose, I think, is like, we need bodies for next year as well.
Yeah, the teams that I'm looking at, you mentioned the Mets, they're 35-42. They're 15 games back of the Atlanta Braves in the National League East. So they're 8 games back of the wild card as well. So that's a pretty hefty distance that the Mets are going to have to make up. The San Diego Padres are 37-41. They're 9.5 games back of Arizona. It's 6.5 games back of the wild card. Like, these are the two teams. I know everyone's been circulating it. I've been making, as far as his analogy, the vultures will be eventually circling Rick Hahn and the Chicago White Sox about the 4 pitchers that they have in Lucas Giolito, Lance Lynn, Kendall Graveman, and Joe Kelly. But I'm wondering if the vultures are already circulating what's going on in Queens and in San Diego. These two teams, I was expecting, would maybe meet in the National League Championship Series, contending to win the National League pennant and make it to the World Series. And even though they got better records than the Chicago White Sox, they're so far away right now of either winning the division or trying to catch up in the wild card, that I'm wondering if those front offices decide to push more guys out. And if that is the case, do the White Sox inquire? I don't think so, but again, we just saw what the Angels did. And if you ever wanted the White Sox to be buyers, that's a good blueprint of them buying.
Yeah, I think I saw Jake Cronenworth pop up in a tweet just as an idea for the White Sox. And like, now I'm looking to how he's doing. Like, it's not good, but just...
Yeah, I had that idea before the season, the contemplating, hey, White Sox trade Andrew Vaughn to San Diego for Jake Cronenworth, but I don't think you would make that deal right now.
Oh, yeah, he signed the extension, so yeah, no.
Well, that's right, they did extend him.
Yeah,
he's got a 0.2 WAR. This has not been a good season for the Crone dog.
Yeah, God, no. So, no. Well, I'm looking at, he's getting paid $12.2 million through age 36.
Yeah, we talked about Texas and how they kind of laid out a path on how you could fire a well-liked and at times successful front office in John Daniels and replace him with Chris Young. I don't know how much longer AJ Preller is going to stay in San Diego. I get ownership loves him, but at some point, ownership with all this money that they're spending, you kind of need results, and you kind of wonder if this was going to be able to carry the momentum of the Padres finally getting through the Dodgers to the postseason and making the NLCS last year. And I know that we're talking about general baseball here, folks, and kind of moving away from like the White Sox and Angels series. But this is on my mind. Like, I would also love to talk about what the hell is going on in Cincinnati. That's been super exciting to see what the Reds are doing. But it just seems to be muddying up this entire trade market of like who's actually buying and who's actually selling. Yeah,
but if pieces shake loose, it just I was thinking of Cronenworth. He was on his original deal where he'd be a free agent like after I think next year it would have been. Like that would have been a case where like maybe buy low on him. He helps out next year, and if not, like the roster's falling apart anyway. So great. But yeah, to go back to Cincinnati, like to bring it back to the White Sox Angels, like I remember watching Ellie De La Cruz last year when I was with Project Birmingham. That was my first look at him, and I didn't know too much about him. Like I knew the name, I knew like he was an infielder. I knew like I had to separate him from O'Neal Cruz in terms of like being a tall infielder, but I didn't really know much about him. Never saw him firsthand or anything like that. I remember seeing him like, wow, that's a huge guy. Like, oh wait, that's De La Cruz. Wait, like he, how's he, playing like infield and such, and then like. He singled. I was looking at the box score like to confirm my memory because I remember him seeing his speed and he singled and he stole second base. And then like, wait, he's that big and he's that fast. And like going back to this weekend and watching like Shohei Ohtani, like it still blows my mind looking at his stats. Like he's got 10 stolen bases. Like I can get that he's a great pitcher, and I can get that like he has a DH hits for power. Like I shouldn't take that for granted, but like I can square it up. Like theoretically, Babe Ruth was the same way. In terms of like baseball has seen it before. They haven't seen it like forever. And like, it shouldn't happen now, but like it has, like my brain can comprehend that. I can't comprehend how he's fast enough to steal 10 bases and a half.
Yeah.
As well as being a power hitter, elite power hitter and elite pitcher at the same time. Like that's what blows my mind. And so like, as we watch Ohtani play the White Sox, like love watching him play, but like, that's what still like shocks me is watching him run. Like, he's a DH. Like, you think like, oh yeah, he can't play the field. Yeah, he could play the field if, it made sense to do so and put the strain. But given everything else he's doing for the team, it makes sense to just have him hit. But watching him run, watching him take extra bases, watching him steal bases, like, shouldn't happen. That's unholy almost. And I love it, but it also scares me.
Yeah, De La Cruz hit for the cycle. This weekend for Cincinnati. I think the triple that he had to complete the cycle, he ran at like 11 seconds, which is just amazing.
And he's
huge. Amazingly fast.
Like, he's just, it's like tall guys shouldn't be able to like move that quickly.
Now I'm jealous. I wish the White Sox were in Cincinnati a couple months later. We could have seen him. The Reds are a totally different team now than when we saw him for the road trip earlier this season. But
yeah, he's 6'5", like he's listed at 6'5", seems taller than that, but just usually those guys who are that tall, like they have good top end speed, but the acceleration maybe isn't there. But like, no, he's down the line. He's, cutting corners. He's, burst. Like it's amazing. And, it's fun when you go to minor league games, you see it firsthand, like, oh, like I don't know much about him, but I'm seeing it immediately and I'm not a scout. Like it's just there. And it's fun to see it when it's just there.
Well, that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine podcast. Again, we'll recap as far as the Chicago White Sox and Angels series later this week. So we'll have Sox Machine live Thursday night to recap on how the White Sox do against the Angels. And of course, you can read their game recaps, and we'll have the White Sox wake-up calls this week covering the games. But again, that will do it for this episode. If you just discovered the Sox Machine podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. Follow us on Twitter. We're at Sox Machine. I'm at Sox Machine_Josh. Those are also our Instagram handles. And we also upload our podcast episodes into our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. So if you enjoy watching videos, you can check out our videos there. And if you do, please subscribe to our channel. If you enjoy our work and want more, you can get more by signing up to become a Patreon supporter at patreon.com/Sox Machine, where our Patreon supporters get exclusive content like Jim's P.O. Sox mailbags. I just recently wrote why Paul Skeens, the LSU pitcher, in my opinion, should be the #1 draft pick in this upcoming 2023 Major League Baseball draft. So that's examples of exclusive content just for our Patreon supporters. They also get ad-free versions of the podcast and website. And when we have new Sox Machine swag, they're the first ones to receive it. Monthly plans start at $2, or you can save with an annual subscription. Again, sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com, your home for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.